Welcome to our viewers in Nigeria and across the world. Lunchtime Politics begins right now. President Bola Tinubu meets with service chiefs at the State House, the very first since he assumed office on Monday. And top on the list, of course, is national security. The Central Bank of Nigeria refutes reports that it has devalued the nation's currency to 630 naira against the dollar, says the official exchange rate remains at 465. And Nigerians across the country react to NNPC's upward adjustment of the price of petrol to between 480 and over 500 naira, as Labour reveals that government says it cannot afford subsidy for another month. Some make appointments into their cabinet, others continue to undo the appointments and decisions of their predecessors. We'll begin with news just in. President Bola Tinubu is currently meeting with service chiefs at the State House in the nation's capital, Abuja. Well, the meeting, which was a routine during the previous administration, is the very first of such since President Tinubu's assumption of office on Monday. In attendance are the Chief of Army Staff, Lieutenant General Farouk Yahya, the Chief of Naval Staff, Vice Admiral Awol Gambo, and the Chief of Air Staff, Air Marshal Kano, as well as Inspector General of Police, Usman Alkali Baba. Others in attendance are the Director General of the Department of State Service, Yusuf Bichi, the Director General of the National Intelligence Agency, Ahmed Rufai Abubakar. We'll bring you more from the meeting as they unfold. But President Tinubu had, in his inauguration speech, vowed that security shall be top priority for his administration. He promised to reform the nation's security doctrine and architecture, as well as invest more in security personnel with better training, equipment, and firepower. Well, it's another day at the Presidential Election Petition Tribunal. And earlier today, the court had to step down hearing in the petition filed by Mr. Peter Obi and the Labour Party against the election of President Bola Tinubu for 10 minutes. The petition was stepped down as a result of what the court described as poor schedule of documents being sought to be tendered to establish the allegations of malpractices during the presidential election. The court then resumed and discovered that the documents were not properly scheduled as ordered by the courts, and some discrepancies were uncovered while rendering the documents from the 23 local government areas of Benue State. For counsel to Mr. Obi and the party, Emeka Okpokpo sought to use documents not filed to conduct the proceedings, but the move was rejected on the ground of illegality. And now the court has since reconvened, and our correspondent Emmanuela Ekele reports that the Labour Party has also tendered documents from the Rivers State. Well, this is, of course, an ongoing development, and we'll bring you more details as soon as they come in. Well, we're from the courts to the streets. Nigerians today woke up to reports circulating that the CBN has devalued the nation's currency to about 630 naira to a dollar. But in a swift reaction, the Apex Bank has refuted the claims. A statement from the bank's acting head of corporate communications, Issa Abdulmumin, states that the news report, which in the imagination of the newspaper is exclusive, is replete with outright falsehoods and destabilizing innuendos, reflecting potentially willful ignorance of the said medium as the workings of the Nigerian foreign exchange market. The statement further adds that for the avoidance of doubt, the exchange rate at the investors and exporters, that's the I&E window, traded this morning, June the 1st, at 465 naira to $1 and has been stable around this rate for a while. The Apex Bank cautions Nigerians to ignore the claims in its entirety, saying it is speculative and calculated at causing panic in the market. And now to the fallout from the hike in the price of petrol by the NNPC Limited. The Nigeria Labour Congress is demanding that the federal government reverts to status quo by reversing the price of fuel before resuming negotiations with the labour unions. But this is the outcome of the deadlocked meeting between the federal government and labor unions over fuel subsidy. The meeting, which began at about 4 p.m. yesterday at the presidential villa, had in attendance representatives of the federal government as well as the governor of the central bank, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, the NNPC Limited Group CEO, Mr. Mele Kyari, former NLC president, Mr. Adams Oshomole, and members of the Nigerian Labour Congress led by the national president, Mr. Joe Ajero, and the president of the TUC, Mr. Festus Osifo. Now, more details are emerging from that meeting between government and labor representatives, which, of course, fails to reach a conclusion on the modalities for the removal of subsidy. That's if it should even be done at all. The president of the Trade Union Congress and Pengasen, Mr. Festus Osifo, who was at that meeting yesterday, says that the federal government came clean, that it does not have the finances to pay for subsidy till the end of June, as it earlier planned, a stance which he criticizes. Now, according to him, the government also offered 5,000 naira as palliative for the vulnerable. That's from the $800 million World Bank loan.
During the inaugural speech, that subsidy is gone. So part of the challenge we had, we quickly went back to the 2023 Appropriation Act to check, were we mistaken? Where are we on this? So we saw that it was still a law as at that time. So we now said that if this is still a law today, then why will subsidy be gone? So we thought, in fact, that there will be a retraction or a clarification on that by them issuing statement to clarify that, okay, it's up to the end of June, but that we are going to engage all stakeholders and all that. But at the end of the day, they said that they are implementing now, that the issue is that they don't have the finance to even sustain till the end of June. But we said that this is the law. So why can't you look for finance anywhere you could get finance from in order to also get this done? But what government has said, to answer your question succinctly, is that the deregulation has already started.
Right.
That means they are not waiting till June. They talked about some palliatives, but one of the palliatives that they talked about that I will be comfortable to discuss on this program, not to preempt the neck of Trade Union Congress, is actually on the issue of 5,000. So they brought it forth, just as they sent to the National Assembly on the $800 million loan from the World Bank. So they brought it, and we challenged it. We told them that this is not going to work. This is not going to work because the issues are very clear. The ones you've done before, how were they done? How did you arrive at these numbers? We don't even know the people that have received this money. Where is the data? Nigeria is a country that we don't have database.
Let's now see the situation across the nation now. Take Yobe in the northeast, for example, where petrol now sells between 560 naira and 580 naira. When Channels Television went around Damaturu, the state capital, almost half of the filling stations have shut down, with others selling above the new pump price, having limited queues. Our correspondent reports that there's been a drastic reduction in vehicular movement, especially along the popular Damaturu-Maiduguri road, due to the high cost of the product.
It's rather very unfortunate that the citizens of this nation are suffering what ideally they are not supposed to suffer. It is a well-known fact that the budget for this year, 2023, made provision for the subsidization of PMS up to June 30th. But just of a student, we just woke up to this sad news that is causing a lot of tension among the citizens, which is very uncalled for. Well, Nigerians will have to take their fate into their hands, but sincerely speaking, in other advanced nations, this is something that would have called for a very serious protest, because there is no how somebody that is a country that has a minimum wage of 30,000 naira, and you are now buying fuel for more than 30,000 naira for a full tank. It means the whole thing is not matching.
Well, here in Lagos, southwest Nigeria, petrol is now selling between 488 and 530 naira per litre in most filling stations. That's in response to Well, that announcement about the removal of subsidy on petrol. Motorists are already apprehensive about the impact of the price increase on their livelihood.
Long queues are what you see whenever there's fuel scarcity, and no less of the expectation in the aftermath of President Bola Tinubu's pronouncement of subsidy removal on petrol. 2 days after the announcement, queues around filling stations in Lagos persist, causing gridlock on connecting roads. Agitations ensue amidst panic buying, especially when motorists cannot predict what the marketer would come up with regarding the pump price or its availability after hours of waiting. That's what plays out at a corn oil outlet in Ikeja.
Most people are even stranded. I can't even go home since yesterday, just because my fuel, there's no even fuel in my car again. So I have to park, bring up a cake to buy.
This morning, again, when they got here, they started selling at 185. Then all of a sudden, they just stopped and they said the price has increased 488. So we don't know the reason for that. And presently, they are not selling. We are just here hoping they are going to sell. And we are just hoping they will sell for the normal price and not 500.
From 185 Naira official pump price, corn oil and others now sell a litre of petrol at 489 Naira, an option some find difficult to cope with.
It's better I park my car somewhere and, when everything comes down, I know what next to do. So I can't cope with it. For now, I can't cope.
So, wherever you find a lesser crowd, the pump price is apparently increased. Marketers selling at the official rates have to contend with crowds of anxious motorists.
I traveled a lot and I've been to, even all the 4 contestants were like, they were of the same opinion that they're going to remove subsidy. To the best of my knowledge, subsidy is a scam. You understand? And the better we get it right, the good for us as a Nigerian.
Even though some commuters have reduced at bus stops and motor parks, as a result of high cost of transportation, inter- and intrastate fare is soaring.
I'm going to Akwanja, and for me to get to Ikeja, get to Akwanja, I have to pass through Ikeja alone. So getting a vehicle now, the one I got is telling me 800 from here to Dobemu.
480 I buy today in NNPC in Korodu. Before Majidun, we are carrying 300 last week, 300 Naira. Today now, we are carrying 500.
In spite of what is playing out at the instance of the fuel subsidy removal, many are optimistic about its benefit in the long run. However, a new price regime is here, a reality Nigerians should be ready to cope with.
Well, we have more for you across parts of the country. Our correspondent Sadiq Ilyasu is live in Kano State, northwest Nigeria, and he joins us with more updates. Hello, Sadiq. I think the question now, naturally, is just how high is the price of petrol in the ancient city? I see you're just right in front of a filling station there.
Yeah, exactly. I'm right in front of one of the filling stations here in Kano. You know, fuel used to sell at around 185 to 210, depending on the filling station where you get the fuel. But now, as I'm talking to you now, this filling station are selling fuel at the cost of 550 Naira per liter. And in some other filling stations, fuel is even sold at 560, depending on the filling station. But most of the mega stations that I went around here in Kano, fuel is sold at 540 per liter. And this has already affected a lot of activities here in Kano State. But with regards to long queues, they have already gone. You can see here, the filling station, there is no queue. There are barely 10 vehicles now in the filling station. And you can see this road is one of the busiest roads in Kano State. And you can see there are not much vehicles moving around because of the cost of fuel right now in Kano State, northwest Nigeria. Back to you, Heidi.
Well, Sadiq, just tell me, how are people then reacting to this? really? Because I imagine that if they have to pay ×2 or ×3 for petrol, that must have some effect. So for the ones you have spoken to, what has been their reaction? How are they getting by?
Well, a lot of people are complaining with regards to the high cost of petrol here in Kano State. And some of them have even decided to drop their vehicles. Some of them opt for commercial transportation, while to some extent I have seen a return of bicycles even in Kano State, because you rarely see a bicycle on a highway. But today, as I'm coming to the office, I noticed that there are some few bicycles. We don't know if we are going to see more of that, but definitely we are seeing more of bicycles. And many people are decided to walk to their places of work, especially those who are living close to their places of work. So I can say the positive side of this is that people are going to get healthier with them walking and riding bicycles. Back to you, Kaidi.
Well, I'm glad you're seeing a silver lining to all of this. Our correspondent Sadiq Ilyas reporting live from Kano State, where he says people are now taking to their bicycles and even trekking. Thank you so much for the update, Sadiq. We'll go on a break now. When we return, we'll bring you more insight into this latest hike in the price of petrol. We have some informed opinion. Dr. Ayodele Oni will be joining us, an oil and gas expert, plus more. That's in a moment. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program. Let's now have a conversation with Dr. Ayodele Oni. He is an oil and gas expert, partner Energy Practice Group, Bloomfield LP. He joins us via Zoom from here in Lagos. I see that at least you're seated somewhere. You're not on the road or on a fuel queue. I know that this has impacted you definitely. And I'd just like us to get right into it. There are questions about NNPC Limited's role in all of this. So I'd like to know, is it right to hike the price now, in spite of the fact that government says subsidy lasts till the end of the month? That's the question for a lot of people. Can we say that NNPC has removed subsidy then?
Okay, thank you very much for having me, and I think that's a good question. You know, once the president makes a policy statement, it trickles down from there. And I think from a political strategy point of view, I think that was the best time he could make such a statement, because he has 4 years to now prove that that statement was right and that decision was right. And once that decision has been made, it then means that even the NNPC, remember that the NNPC is now being corporatized and is now the company set up under the Corporate Affairs Commission, the Companies and Allied Matters Act. So I think from a policy point of view would appear in order. Now there are controversies around payment for subsidy for the rest of May. Now May is over, and I believe that if the debate is that there isn't sufficient monies to even deal with that. So if you take all that into consideration, then you will come to the conclusion that maybe that was just the best decision he could make at that point in time.
But that's coming off the fact that the previous government said subsidy is from January to the end of June. And for a lot of people, that was the goal, June the 30th, brace up until that. So would we say that that government promised and failed? Is that fair? Since they say that it's in the Appropriation Act anyway, which is law. So, I mean, you're a legal practitioner anyway as well, so you can help us understand the implications of that.
Okay, yes, from a legal perspective, you know that the law does not command the impossible. If in reality it can't be done because the finances aren't there, or you've exceeded the amounts budgeted for that, then it means you need to go through the whole process of getting appropriation done and getting approvals at the National Assembly. So from a legal perspective, if you want to be strict law, you could say, you could debate the legality and argue that there's some illegality, but if you want to be more holistic, then you would realize that it could be a matter of the law not commanding what's impossible. If it's the case that the finances aren't there, then the finances aren't there. I just think government then needs to take certain other steps in relation to this to ameliorate the challenges around that. Those are my views.
Right. It would look like a good number of Nigerians want subsidy removed. It's just the how the when, or at least what needs to be done that has been in contention? I recall when the Jonathan government tried to remove subsidy, there was all of that protest saying this is not how you should go about it. If you were to remove it, this is what should be done. I saw an interesting piece you wrote about some of the things that need to be put in place. So I'd like you to just shed more light on that. If subsidy is to be removed the right way, then how should we go about it?
Okay, my initial view has always been that three things need to be in place to remove subsidy. And I guess the government has chosen to remove subsidy first before doing those three things. And I'll very quickly mention what those three things are. Ultimately, the first two would help reduce the quantity of fuel, that's PMS and diesel in particular, businesses, individuals, and factories use. The first one is to ensure that we have more public power, maybe 100% available grid power. Because if we have grid power, you and I would not buy diesel and PMS for our generators. And for businesses, for factories, that's about 40% of their cost. So if you ensure that there's grid power, it then means 40% of that is off. You understand? Maybe you still have 3, 4, 5% based on tariffs for electricity. Because people spend up to 300% of what the actual tariff will be to fuel their generators. You know, electricity works on economies of scale. So if the first thing government needs to do immediately, if this is to stand, is to ensure that whatever it takes, pull all the stops to ensure that grid power is available. The second one is to ensure that you have various means of transportation apart from road transport. You can have rail, and it's not just in Lagos State or in Port Harcourt. You want to ensure that you have in the entirety of the country alternative means for people to move around, even if it's going to be electric bicycles. You know, you want to ensure that beyond relying on PMS, I know every day, almost every week, you'd have to buy petrol for your vehicle. Imagine that, and I understand from Ikorodu to VI, it takes about 5 hours. Imagine that there are ride and park stations where people can ride their vehicles 5 minutes away from the house, 2, 3 minutes, park, go up on a train, or go on water, and can even place their vehicles on sea-going vehicles, on trawlers, on vessels, you know, boats, large boats that can move those vehicles and move the individuals to where they are going. I understand it's 15 minutes from Ikorodu to the island. If you go on water, that's the second option. It will reduce that volume. And thirdly, you want to ensure that we continue to refine in country. Those will help ensure that we spend much less on PMS and diesel. And the adverse impact will be substantially reduced by up to 80%.
I find it rather interesting that you didn't talk about that $800 million World Bank loan as some sort of maybe palliatives, because I know that Labour talked about it, that was part of the things that the federal government tabled before it. Would you say that's a right move to pursue that? In any case, it's still some sort of borrowing. It's just borrowing as a sort of palliative. So what's your thinking on that? Should that also be an option to explore?
Okay, for me, I believe in supporting productive activities rather than handing over handouts to people. Those don't last. If you give people 5,000, I'd rather government created an enabling environment for more jobs to be created. So imagine that government does incentivize investing in other means of transport. You hear about the Hyperloop in California, in Edmonton, in Calgary, in Canada. You hear moves around other means of transportation. You hear about various other means of transportation. I'm trying to recall what that's called, where you have vehicles overhead. You know, people would invest and be more jobs. I'd rather government use that money to incentivize, to enable the environment, to encourage more people to do business and employ more people rather than give handouts that won't last. You know, I'd rather they taught people to fish than give them fish. That's why I don't think that's something sustainable, and I didn't think it was one of the conditions, because it's short term. You don't want to continue to borrow to eat. You want to borrow for productive activity so that more people have jobs. I think that's my view.
Interesting views there. Dr. Ayode Leoni, oil and gas expert, partner, Energy Practice Group, Bloomfield LP. Thank you so much for your time on the show.
Thank you very much for having me.
And now to more political stories. It's sort of different strokes for different folks across the state. Take Rivers, for example, where Governor Simini Alai-Fubara has sworn in 4 commissioners into his cabinet. They were all commissioners in the immediate past administration of former Governor Nyesom Wike, and they have been reassigned to their previous offices in the Ministries of Justice, Works, Finance and Education. Governor Fubara in his address states that the exercise, which comes days after his inauguration, is to let the people of the state know that his administration means business. A similar situation in Katsina State, as Governor Diko Rada has appointed his cabinet members, and the swearing-in ceremony conducted at the council chamber of the new Katsina Government House was attended by families, political associates and the well-wishers of the governor and the new appointees. He asked them to ensure that policies and programs of the state government are fully implemented and in the best interest of the state. But it's a quite different scenario playing out in Benue State, as the governor, Reverend Father Hyacinth Alia, has sacked the political appointees of the Autom administration serving in various ministries, departments and agencies with a directive to hand over to the most senior civil servant in their offices. The Chief Press Secretary of the Governor, Mr. Tersu Kula, disclosed this to journalists at a briefing after an emergency meeting with the first 5 political appointees of the new administration, top civil servants who are responsible for the payment and management of salaries and pension. And out to party politics. The incumbent National Legal Advisor of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA, and the Commissioner for Special Duties in Anambra State, Mr. Sly Ezokenwa, has emerged as National Chairman of the party. And this marks the exit of the former National Chairman, Chief Victor Oye, after serving for 8 years. Well, that's much we can take on the program this afternoon. Clearly interesting day it is turning out to be, and we'll be there to bring you all of the breaking news. I'm Kayode Okikiodu. Thank you for watching.